What would you do if a complete stranger looked you in the eyes and whispered, "I have nowhere to go"? In today's heartwarming Old West story, one lonely cowboy makes a single act of kindness that changes two lives forever. Set in the American frontier of the 1800s, this emotional tale is filled with hope, courage, and the power of compassion. If you enjoy inspiring Western stories with unforgettable characters and meaningful endings, you're in the right place. Before we begin, please take a moment to like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel for more amazing Old West stories every week. Now grab a comfortable seat and let's get started. The autumn wind swept across the rolling plains of the Wyoming Territory in the fall of 1886, carrying with it the scent of dry grass and distant pine. Jacob Turner rode slowly along the old stagecoach trail after spending nearly 3 weeks driving cattle to the railhead. His weathered hat shaded tired eyes that had grown accustomed to long days of silence. Life on the frontier had made him a patient man. Since losing both his parents years before, he had lived alone on a modest cattle ranch, speaking more often to his horses than to another soul. The sun had begun to sink behind the western hills, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. Jacob was eager to reach home before darkness settled over the prairie. His faithful bay horse moved steadily until Jacob noticed something unusual beside the dusty road. Sitting near a broken wagon wheel was a young woman wrapped in a faded brown shawl. A small carpet bag rested at her feet, and her face showed the weariness of someone who had traveled far with little hope left. Jacob slowed his horse and climbed down carefully. Frontier life had taught him to be cautious, but it had also taught him that no decent person ignored someone in need. "Ma'am," he said gently, keeping a respectful distance. "Are you hurt?" The young woman slowly lifted her head. Her blue eyes were red from crying, and her voice trembled as she answered, "No, sir. I have nowhere to go." Those simple words struck Jacob harder than he expected. She introduced herself as Eleanor Hayes, a schoolteacher's daughter from a small farming settlement several counties away. She explained that the previous winter had claimed both her mother and father during a fierce snowstorm. With no brothers or sisters to help her, she had turned to distant relatives, believing they would offer kindness. Instead, they forced her from the family home after taking possession of the property and livestock, leaving her with only a few belongings and enough money for a short journey. For several days she had traveled from ranch to ranch, asking only for honest work. Some ranchers claimed they had no need for another hand. Others simply shut the door without listening. As night after night passed, her money disappeared, and hope became harder to hold on to. Jacob remained silent for a long moment, looking across the empty prairie where darkness was beginning to settle. He knew what loneliness felt like. He also knew that leaving anyone alone on the frontier after sunset could mean death from cold, wild animals or desperate outlaws. Finally, he looked back at Eleanor and spoke in his calm, steady voice. "You won't find much luxury at my place," he said with a faint smile. "Just a small cabin, honest work, and warm meals." Eleanor lowered her eyes, unsure whether to believe such unexpected kindness. Jacob picked up her carpet bag and secured it behind his saddle. "Come along," he said. "You may stay at my ranch until you find your footing. No one should face the prairie alone." For the first time in many weeks, Eleanor felt the burden on her heart begin to lift. She climbed onto the spare horse Jacob led beside him, and together they rode toward the distant ranch beneath the fading light, neither of them realizing that this quiet meeting on a lonely Wyoming road would change both their lives forever. The weeks that followed brought a change neither Jacob Turner nor Eleanor Hayes had expected. Life on the Wyoming ranch was simple, but it was honest. Each morning, Eleanor rose before sunrise to help prepare breakfast, while Jacob handled the cattle and horses. She cleaned the cabin, mended torn shirts, kept careful records of supplies, and tended a small vegetable garden behind the house. What began as a temporary arrangement soon became a partnership built on trust and mutual respect. For the first time in years, Jacob no longer returned to a silent home at the end of the day. Eleanor's cheerful presence filled the cabin with warmth, and her determination impressed him. Though she had lost nearly everything, she never complained. Instead, she worked hard and remained grateful for every kindness shown to her. Winter arrived early that year, covering the prairie in snow. One cold December afternoon, a lawyer from Cheyenne arrived unexpectedly at the ranch. He carried documents concerning Eleanor's late parents. After months of investigation, it had been discovered that the relatives who seized her family's property had done so illegally. Witnesses had come forward, and county records proved the land and livestock rightfully belonged to Eleanor. The news left her speechless. Several weeks later, Jacob accompanied her to the county courthouse. There, before the judge, the evidence was presented. The ruling was clear. Eleanor's inheritance would be restored, and the relatives who had deceived her would lose their claim. When the judge struck his gavel, tears filled Eleanor's eyes. For the first time since her parents' deaths, she felt justice had finally been served. Outside the courthouse, snowflakes drifted gently from the gray winter sky. Eleanor turned toward Jacob, emotion shining in her eyes. "The day you found me beside that road," she said softly, "I believed I had lost everything. I truly thought I was alone in the world." Jacob smiled beneath the brim of his hat. "You were never meant to walk that trail alone," he replied. Over the following months, Eleanor decided not to return to her family's old property. The ranch she had helped build alongside Jacob felt more like home than any place she had ever known. Their friendship slowly blossomed into love, and before long, Jacob gathered the courage to ask her to marry him. The following spring, beneath a bright blue Montana sky and surrounded by neighbors and friends, church bells rang across the valley. As Eleanor walked down the aisle, she smiled at the cowboy who had offered help when she needed it most. What began with the words, "I have nowhere to go," ended with something far greater. A home, a family, and a future they would share together for the rest of their days.